So it's finally happening. Close to 2 years after we got the first teaser trailer for the upcoming Pixar film Elio, followed up by yet another teaser in November of last year, we've finally gotten our hands on the first full-length trailer. I'll be honest, I'd actually forgotten this movie was coming out this year. It feels so long ago that it was first announced, and so to finally get this trailer was actually rather surprising, but in a good way because it looks awesome. It really does feel like Pixar's made a comeback in a big way recently, doesn't it? After a few years of financial disappointments, they released Inside Out 2, which was a box office sensation, becoming the highest grossing film of 2024, and also briefly holding the record of highest grossing animated film of all time. Very briefly. On top of that, we also saw the release of Dream Productions, which I thought was deeply underrated and very awesome, whilst Win or Lose, which just came out this year, was probably my favourite piece of Pixar content in years. It was so good. So whilst I wasn't all that excited for Elio before this, now I am very hyped. That being said though, I do wonder how it's all going to go. Currently, it does feel like the big American animation studios are struggling to get people invested in newer properties and to go and buy tickets to an unknown quantity. All of their recent smash hits have been sequels, and a lot of their future slates are filled up with sequels too. Pixar historically has been able to draw folks to the cinema with their exciting concepts and fresh takes on characterization and world building. Hopefully we can see a return to that because this movie looks a lot of fun, and it would be a shame to see it fail and not make money. Regardless though, I think that's enough for the preamble, and so now it's time to jump into the trailer. Like every film trailer these days, of course, we get a bit of a blurb from Pixar that gives us a brief rundown of what the movie's supposed to be about. It reads, "This summer, moviegoers will meet Elio, an 11-year-old whose biggest wish is to get abducted by aliens, as well as his aunt Olga and Gordon, Elio's unexpected first friend who happens to be an alien. In this big screen adventure, Elio will travel millions of miles across the universe, encountering a host of out-of-this-world creatures who just might help him figure out exactly where he belongs. For centuries, people have called out to the universe looking for answers. In Disney and Pixar's all-new feature film Elio, the universe calls back. The cosmic misadventure introduces Elio, a space fanatic with an active imagination and a huge alien obsession. So when he's beamed up to the Communiverse, an interplanetary organization with representatives from galaxies far and wide, Elio's in for an epic undertaking. Mistakenly identified as Earth's leader, Elio must form new bonds with eccentric alien life forms, navigate a crisis of intergalactic proportions, and somehow discover who and where he's truly meant to be. Okay, I'll admit when I first watched this new trailer, it did feel very different in story direction from the original. I remembered in the teasers that there had been far more discussion of this space UN type of thing, and that didn't have all that much relevance in this specific trailer. So I ended up wondering whether that story had somehow pivoted in the meantime, but the blurb firmly puts that speculation to rest, doesn't it? I felt it was rather impressive to not have to share any of that in this trailer at all. It suggests to me that the film has a lot of narrative depth. Either that or there's too much going on, but we'll see. We start off the trailer following Elio, who is quickly established as a very quirky person. He has a colander on his head, a customized one that you might see a crazy conspiracy theorist wearing in a comedy film or something. He has a very snazzy sort of cape, and seems to be very keen on being abducted by aliens. To me, this suggests he's going to be presented as a character who is quite out there and very naive. I mean, what sort of person would actually want to be abducted by aliens? If something is advanced enough to come to your planet to snatch you away without a trace, there's a good chance that they will consider you a lesser life form. Good way to end up in a space zoo, or dissected, or sold on the black market in space. Then again, I guess the kid is only 11 years old. Also, I've noticed he wears that eye patch on and off in some scenes and not in others. I'm not even going to bother to try to untangle the timelines on this. Like many young protagonists, Elio seems to be an orphan, living with an immediate family member, in this case his aunt, and is struggling to find his place in the world. He's skipping out on school, and it's made very clear that his aunt's struggling and is likely new at all this. I feel like his parents dying might be a relatively recent thing, hence the parenting books and her not seeming able to cope with everything. Then we skip over to Gordon, who's clearly meant to be Elio's alien counterpart, who has many of the same struggles. He is the son of Lord Grygon, and a member of what seems to be a very warlike, battle-hardened species of slug people. His father wants him to be just like him, but Gordon seems to not be all that keen. He feels like he doesn't fit in with that world, and his father seems to be a bit disappointed in that. What I'm guessing happens here is that much like Elio, Gordon's going to be sending out some sort of message into the stars, where he'll get picked up by the same vessel that comes to Elio, and that's how they're going to meet. Here is where we get what has become a pretty stock standard trope in the modern day film trailer. A classic rock song to go over the top, to drum up interest and trick you into thinking that what you're seeing is cooler than it is. I'm not saying that without the song the trailer would be bad, but it's why they use these types of songs. It gives the trailer a certain mystique and prestige. Queen especially has maintained major popularity into the modern era, and Don't Stop Me Now is a song that has over the years become known as one of their most enduring classics. We get some narration from his aunt telling Elio that life isn't out in space, with a shot of him crying and looking up at the stars, and then another scene of her scolding him in his bedroom, telling him he needs to make friends. Oh really? Do I need to make friends? Hadn't noticed, thanks for that. It very much seems like she's not extremely emotionally in tune with this kid, and so like he says, he feels like he has no place here. No place he belongs, which is honestly pretty sad. This movie's going to bring the feels, I think. Elio, in another scene, seems to have been left alone in the base his aunt works at, and either he somehow gets away with snooping, or some idiot has left this open at the counter. Either way, it seems the military was going to be trying to send a message out into the stars to contact aliens, and Elio manages to record his own and send it off first, before he finally gets to live his dream of getting abducted by aliens. You can faintly see that when that happens, he is with a bunch of kids. Did we see that in previous trailers? Do you reckon they were bullying him or something, or just talking? He gets beamed up into the communiverse, and instead of focusing on the actual plot of them being some intergalactic UN type of deal, they focus more on Elio and his personal story. In a very, very chopped up dialogue sequence, which feels like it's obviously been scraped together from various different scenes to serve a purpose within this trailer specifically, we learn these aliens search the universe for important people, for dreamers and stargazers. People like Elio. I gotta say that visually this looks magnificent. Just look at the different shots with all the various different alien species. It feels like a massive labor of love in that regard. Sort of reminds me of when I first saw the likes of Inside Out or Finding Nemo, and how they create these vibrant, colourful worlds that feel so diverse and exciting. So beautiful. Please don't be a flop. I very much doubt it will be, but honestly, sometimes I'm not all that in tune with the wider internet sentiment, so it very well could be. We cut to Elio falling into some gross looking web stuff and being approached by Gordon, who initially seems like he's a monstrous creature ready to eat him, but is actually just trying to talk to him and be friendly. Yeah, so he's definitely going to have that parallel arc to Elio, where he calls out to the stars to be taken away from his original life, and then makes friends with him. I'm quickly realizing that this feels like some alternate universe version of Lilo and Stitch. Some kid who finds that they don't belong, encounters an alien who doesn't belong, and through their friendship they solve issues much bigger than themselves. Just this time, it's in space. Hilariously, it harkens back to the days where you had movies that were ever so slightly different to each other, being released around the same time because leaks were happening between the studios, and they're all just stealing them. With the live-action Lilo and Stitch releasing literally a month earlier than this, just makes it all the more funny, all the more oddly nostalgic. I love it. Next, we have a cuteness overload, where the two of them are sitting alone on the ship somewhere, I suppose, and Elio opens up his heart to Gordon, telling him that he never managed to fit in on Earth, and thus he figured if he left Earth, it would be better for him. But now he wonders if the problem is simply him. I'm guessing that whilst the initial honeymoon phase in space was all well and good, that pretty quickly he's going to start running into the same old roadblocks of feeling out of place, like he doesn't fit. Only this time, he has a friend there to tell him that he likes him, and that he seems fine just the way he is. I have to say Gordon's voice actor is the cutest voicer, by the way. Definitely makes up for his utterly heinous character design. I know he's meant to look ugly, and thus the cute voice makes him endearing, but still, ugh. I'm also starting to suspect that maybe Elio's biological parents instilled in him a love for space, and that's why he longs for it so much. In a way, it's also to connect with his parents, and two people that would have loved and accepted him for who he is. They're just gone now. Just quickly took a look at the meaning behind the name Elio, which is apparently derived from some Latin names meaning sun. Feels very much like something parents who are super into space would name their kid, you know, the sun being the center of their universe and all. So yeah, fully convinced that this is part of the reason he's obsessed with space and aliens. We get a couple more scenes of the two of them bonding before we cut over to the action. Gordon's dad appears and threatens to conquer the communiverse, probably to try to get his son back, or maybe because his species just like to conquer things. Very big Gantu vibes, if I'm being honest. Or a swole Jumper. Although, Jumper is pretty swole anyway. Look at that boy, what a unit. Once you start thinking about it, the Lilo and Stitch comparisons really just seem so obvious. Everybody on the ship's too scared to serve as the ambassador to go and talk to him, so Elio steps up to try to do so. There's a funny gag where he crashes his ship into Grygon's multiple times, as he doesn't know how to fly, which the aliens consider him playing hardball, and thus being very heroic, which I found quite amusing. I love silly gags like that. We then actually see Grygon start to destroy the communiverse, which I didn't expect, before we cut to Elio and his aunt back on Earth. Seems like this is after he returns to Earth, and he tells her that his friends need help. Of course, she's simply happy that at long last, he made a friend! Oh, can't wait for that rude awakening. We also see what I think is their car being chased by cops, and then his pod blasting out of the warehouse, so I reckon they're going to go and steal the ship from the military to get him back into space to help stop Grygon. It also looks like he and his aunt resolve their differences. That hug feels like him realizing she really does love him and accept him. The trailer concludes with two scenes I found very funny. The first is Grygon communicating to the communiverse that they will feel his wrath, only for Gordon and Elio to put on a performance to try to hold him off, with Elio pretending to hold his son hostage and torturing him publicly, which they simulate through tickling to make Gordon laugh. Since their culture doesn't seem to allow for things like laughter and fun, Qui-Gon believes it all and panics, begging him to stop. I think the slugs are going to reconcile at the end of things, by the way. A guy like Qui-Gon trying to reform to please his son would be very funny, so I doubt they missed that opportunity. Certainly more compelling than just killing him off and having him be unrepentant. The final scene entails Gordon and Elio chilling in the lava tunnels because Gordon took them there, not knowing Elio isn't fireproof. Thus, he has to hop inside his very scary mouth, to prevent himself from dying. Nah, those teeth are yucky, no thank you. So that's the end of the trailer, and I have to say, this movie looks good. Very good. I'm expecting it to be very well received by those who go to see it, but whether it attracts a crowd in the first place remains to be seen. It seems to have the perfect blend of wacky and wholesome with a clear message and a hook that draws you in, just like many of Pixar's best movies. Hopefully it lives up to them and gets the success it deserves. I beg of you, please go and watch this movie. If you watch my videos regularly, you know I largely don't have a problem with sequels as long as they're very good. I also don't have a problem in principle with the live-action remakes as long as they're good. I'm not one of those people that think every sequel is unworthy and a blight on the industry. However, I do think it's obvious that the only moneymakers are remakes and sequels, and that is a big shame, because those movies are enjoyable and there's no problem with them, but we should be able to have both. We won't, though, if they're the only types of films that ever get the big numbers. That's why it's so important that people support these new stories. We've seen that the animation's stellar and the premise looks promising, so if people aren't at least going to try it, to be quite frank, the lack of fresh stories that's often complained about online is on them. Something about horses and drinking. Anyway, with that serious note, these have all been my opinions, and now I'd like to hear yours. What did you think of the fresh trailer for Elio? Did you like it? Hate it? Are you going to give this movie a watch in the cinemas? I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know.